My cousin ruined my business and reputation with lies. Years later, he's broke and asking me for a job at my new successful company. I, 34M, come from a large, tight-knit family. Growing up, I was especially close with my cousin Jake, 35M. We were inseparable as kids and remained good friends into adulthood. After college, I started my first business, a local marketing agency. It was small, but growing steadily. Jake had bounced between various sales jobs and was struggling financially. When an entry-level position opened up at my company, I didn't hesitate to offer it to Jake. He seemed grateful for the opportunity and threw himself into the work. For the first few months, everything was great. Jake was charismatic and quickly became one of our top-performing sales reps. I was thrilled to see him thriving and felt good about being able to help family. Looking back, I should have seen the red flags. Jake started pushing for a promotion and raise just 6 months in. When I explained that it was too soon and he needed more experience first, he seemed to take it personally. He became moody and started stirring up drama in the office. I chalked it up to stress and tried to be patient with him. Then came the incident that changed everything. We had recently landed our biggest client yet, a local car dealership chain. It was a huge deal for our small agency and I was ecstatic. Jake had been the lead on acquiring the account and I made sure to praise him publicly for it. About a month into the contract, the owner of the dealership chain called me, absolutely livid. He accused us of massively overcharging them and failing to deliver on promised services. I was stunned and assured him there must be some misunderstanding. As I dug deeper, I was horrified to discover that Jake had doctored reports and lied about the services we were providing. He had also been pocketing a significant portion of their payments. When I confronted Jake, he broke down crying and begged me not to go to the police. He swore it was a one-time thing and that he'd pay back every cent. Against my better judgment, I agreed to handle it privately. I fired Jake on the spot, paid back the client out of my own savings, and did my best to smooth things over. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Jake apparently felt betrayed by me firing him. He embarked on a scorched earth campaign to destroy my reputation and business. He spread vicious lies to my other clients, claiming we were engaged in all sorts of illegal practices. He posted defamatory reviews online. He even went to my employees and told them the company was about to go under, causing several to quit in panic. I tried desperately to contain the damage, but it was too late. Clients fled in droves. My remaining staff lost faith in me. Less than a year after firing Jake, I was forced to shut down the business I had poured my heart and soul into building. I was devastated. Not just financially, but emotionally. My dream had been crushed and my reputation was in tatters. Worst of all, this had been done to me by someone I considered family, someone I had tried to help. The betrayal cut deep. The next few years were tough. I struggled to find work with the stain on my professional reputation. I fell into a depression and withdrew from friends and family. I felt like a failure and was too ashamed to face anyone. During this dark period, I hit rock bottom. I remember sitting in my small, dingy apartment, surrounded by unpaid bills and rejection letters from job applications. I seriously contemplated ending it all. The pain and humiliation felt unbearable. What saved me was a chance encounter with an old college professor. He saw past my defeated exterior and reminded me of the potential he'd always seen in me. He offered me a part-time job helping with some research projects. It wasn't much, but it was a lifeline when I desperately needed one. Slowly but surely, I clawed my way back. I moved to a new city for a fresh start. I took some courses to expand my skills. I started freelancing and gradually rebuilt my client base and reputation. It was hard work, but it taught me valuable lessons about business and people. I also sought therapy to work through the trauma and rebuild my self-esteem. It was a long, often painful process, but it helped me process my anger and learn to trust again, both myself and others. Now, 7 years after the implosion of my first company, I'm in a much better place. I've built a new digital marketing agency that has grown far beyond what my first business ever was. We have offices in 3 cities and a staff of over 50 people. I'm more successful than I ever dreamed possible back then. I've worked hard to move past the anger and resentment towards Jake. I rarely think about him these days. Or at least I didn't, until last week when I received a message from him out of the blue. The message started with a long, rambling apology. Jake claimed he had hit rock bottom and done a lot of soul searching. He said he deeply regretted his actions and wanted to make amends. He congratulated me on my new success and said he was proud of me for bouncing back. Then came the real reason for the message. Jake was hoping I might have a job available for him. He explained that he had fallen on hard times. After burning bridges in our hometown, He had moved away and drifted between various jobs. But he couldn't seem to hold anything down long term. He'd recently gone through a divorce and was struggling to make child support payments. He was on the verge of being evicted from his apartment. Jake swore he had changed and learned from his mistakes. He promised that if I gave him another chance, he would work harder than anyone and be eternally loyal. He said he understood if I couldn't forgive him, but he was desperate and didn't know where else to turn. The message stirred up a lot of conflicting emotions in me. My first instinct was anger. How dare he reach out asking for help after what he did to me? But I also felt a twinge of pity. Jake and I had once been as close as brothers. Part of me hated seeing him in such a desperate situation, regardless of his past actions. I haven't responded to the message yet. I've been mulling it over for days, weighing the pros and cons. On one hand, I worked incredibly hard to rebuild after Jake's betrayal. The thought of allowing him back into my life and business is terrifying. I'm not sure I could ever fully trust him again. And I worry about how it might impact my employees and company culture to bring in someone with his history. On the other hand, I believe in second chances. I know from experience how difficult it can be to bounce back from rock bottom. Part of me wonders if helping Jake turn his life around could be an opportunity for healing and closure. And there's a small, petty part of me that likes the idea of Jake having to work under me after he tried to destroy me. I've considered offering him a low-level, probationary position. Something with no real power or access to sensitive information. I could keep him on a very short leash and cut ties again at the first sign of trouble. But is it worth the risk and stress? My wife thinks I'm crazy for even considering it. She says once a snake, always a snake. My business partner is also strongly against it. But a few friends have encouraged me to at least hear Jake out in person before making a final decision. I'm really torn and could use some outside perspectives. Am I a fool for even thinking about giving Jake another chance? Or would I be cruel to turn my back on family in their time of need? What would you do in my shoes? Edit. Wow, this blew up overnight. Thank you all for the thoughtful responses and advice. I'm reading through everything and will post an update once I've made a decision. Edit 2. Update. First of all, thank you again to everyone who took the time to offer advice and share their perspectives. It's given me a lot to think about. After careful consideration, I've decided not to offer Jake a job. However, I'm not completely shutting the door on him either. Here's what I'm planning to do. 1. I'm going to agree to meet with Jake in person. I want to hear him out face to face and get a sense of whether his remorse is genuine. I'll make it clear up front that I'm not offering him a job, but I'm willing to listen. 2. If the meeting goes well and I believe Jake is sincere about wanting to turn his life around, I'm prepared to offer some limited help. Not a job, but possibly paying for him to take some professional development courses to improve his skills. Connecting him with some of my industry contacts to explore job opportunities, with full disclosure about his past, offering to serve as a reference after a probationary period if he can hold down a job elsewhere for at least a year. 3. Any help will be contingent on Jake taking full responsibility for his past actions, making amends where possible, and demonstrating real change through his actions, not just words. 4. I'll be setting clear boundaries. Jake will not be welcome at my home or office. All meetings will be in public places. He will not have any access to my business or personal information. 5. I'm going to strongly encourage Jake to seek therapy or counseling to work through the issues that led to his past behavior. I feel this approach balances compassion with protecting myself and my business. It gives Jake an opportunity to prove himself without putting me at significant risk. If he takes advantage of the help and shows real growth, perhaps we can slowly rebuild some level of relationship. If not, I can walk away with a clear conscience knowing I tried. To those who shared stories of giving second chances that backfired, thank you. Your experiences were a valuable warning and a big part of why I decided against offering a job. To those who urged compassion and shared stories of redemption, thank you as well. You reminded me of the person I want to be, someone who doesn't give up on people entirely. I'll post another update after I meet with Jake to let you all know how it goes. Thanks again for all the support and advice. Edit 3, Update 2, I met with Jake yesterday. It did not go well. I'm equal parts disappointed and relieved. I suggested we meet at a coffee shop near my office. Jake showed up 20 minutes late, looking disheveled. He immediately launched into a sob story about how his car broke down and he had to beg a ride from a neighbor. Looking back, this should have been my first red flag. I let Jake talk first. He repeated much of what was in his message, how sorry he was, how much he'd changed, how desperate his situation was. In person, it felt rehearsed and insincere. He kept emphasizing how unfair the world had been to him rather than taking real responsibility for his actions. When I started asking specific questions about what he'd been doing these past 7 years, things quickly unraveled. His work history was spotty at best. He'd been fired from multiple jobs for various infractions, showing up late, conflicts with coworkers, missing sales targets. He admitted to still struggling with gambling, which was what led to his embezzlement years ago. I explained that I wouldn't be offering him a job, but that I was open to helping him in other ways if he was serious about turning things around. I outlined the plan I mentioned in my last update, paying for classes, making introductions, etc. Jake's demeanor instantly changed. He became angry and accusatory. He said I was being selfish and that real family would give him a job, no questions asked. He brought up childhood incidents where he claimed I had wronged him, as if that justified his past actions. When I stood firm, he stormed out of the coffee shop, causing a scene. About an hour after the meeting, I received a series of nasty text messages from Jake. He accused me of thinking I was better than him and said he'd make me regret turning my back on family. The messages became increasingly incoherent and belligerent. I blocked his number. So, there you have it. Sadly, it seems Jake hasn't changed much after all. I'm disappointed, but also relieved that I trusted my instincts and didn't bring him into my business. To those who cautioned me about the risks of giving him another chance, you were absolutely right. Thank you. I admit I feel a bit foolish for even considering helping Jake after what he did years ago. But I realize that's not a bad thing. It shows I haven't let his betrayal completely harden my heart. I'm still capable of compassion and wanting to see the best in people. I won't let this experience change that, but I will continue to balance it with appropriate caution and strong boundaries. As for Jake, I truly hope he gets the help he obviously still needs. But I now know that I can't be the one to provide it. For my own well-being and that of my family and employees, I need to keep him out of my life. Thank you all again for your advice and support through this situation. It's been a valuable reminder of some important life lessons. I'm going to take some time to refocus on my family, my business, and the people who have stood by me through thick and thin. Those are the relationships I need to nurture. I don't anticipate any further updates, but I'll be sure to post if anything significant happens. Wishing you all the best. Edit 4, final update. I didn't expect to be posting again so soon, but there's been a significant development that I felt I should share. 2 days after my meeting with Jake, I received a call from my aunt, Jake's mother. She was distraught and asked if I'd heard from Jake recently. Apparently, he had disappeared after borrowing her car, leaving behind a vague note about making things right. Given our recent interaction and the threatening messages he'd sent, I was immediately concerned. I told my aunt about our meeting and Jake's reaction. She broke down crying, revealing that Jake had been struggling with addiction and mental health issues for years. She'd been trying to get him help, but he always refused. I spent the next few hours making calls, to mutual friends, to hospitals, and finally to the police to file a missing person report. As I was on the phone with the police, I received a text from an unknown number. It was Jake. The message was rambling and hard to follow, but the gist was clear: Jake was planning to take his own life. He said he couldn't bear the shame of what he'd done and felt like a failure. He apologized for everything and said the world would be better off without him. I immediately called the police back and gave them the new information. They were able to trace the cell signal to a motel on the outskirts of town. I rushed there, arriving just as the police and paramedics did. They found Jake in the motel room. He had taken a large quantity of pills, but, thankfully, they got to him in time. He was rushed to the hospital and admitted to the ICU. It was touch and go for a while, but he pulled through. I've spent much of the past week at the hospital, supporting my aunt and uncle. Jake is now in the psychiatric ward, finally getting the help he's needed for so long. The doctors say he has a long road ahead, but there's hope if he commits to treatment. This whole experience has been a stark reminder that there's often more going on beneath the surface than we realize. Jake's actions were inexcusable, but they were symptoms of deeper issues that had been left unaddressed for far too long. I'm still processing everything that's happened. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with Jake. Trust, once broken, is incredibly hard to rebuild. But I'm grateful that he's alive and getting help. Whatever happens, I hope he can find peace and turn his life around. As for me, this has reinforced my commitment to mental health awareness, both in my personal life and in my business. I'm looking into ways to better support employee mental health and considering partnering with local organizations that provide mental health services to those who can't afford them. Thank you all again for your support throughout this ordeal. Your advice and perspectives have been invaluable. This will be my final update on the situation. I need to step back and focus on processing everything that's happened. Wishing you all the best.